So very good evening to all of you. I hope everyone is in good health and are safe, right? So today I will be taking art and culture questions in this year's mains paper, right? Now thinking about art and culture, what comes to the aspirant's mind is that how basically we need to approach art and culture given the fact that the kind of questions UPSC over the years have been asking in culture, you really don't have a one book consolidating all the facts. So what one should do? So before answering this question, what one should do for the type of questions UPSC is giving, we should first understand what type of questions came this year, right? So whenever one is starting for mains, so the whole idea to start this session and how I will be dealing with it is, I'm not only catering to those who have written mains this year. This session will always, be insightful for every aspirant who is thinking to prepare for mains, right? So if someone is giving next year or next to next year, they can also understand how questions have been coming in UPSC and how the sources need to be used, how answer writing needs to be done for securing good marks. Now coming to understand the kind of questions UPSC gives in their mains exam, they usually are coming from your syllabus. Now for that, one needs to know the syllabus. So Indian culture syllabus as per UPSC entails, the salient aspects of art forms, literature, architecture from ancient to modern times. Now, when we read this syllabus, we understand that these are the broadly aspects which one needs to, see when they are starting their preparation. Now, what about the questions? So questions more or less, if you look at the keywords given in the syllabus, this year have come from, the syllabus itself. So if we look at the questions this year, these are the 4 questions which came this year. So the first question dealt with, rock cut architecture, again a keyword given in your syllabus. If you look at the second question, which is Pala period is the most significant phase in the history of Buddhism in India. Again, this question can be placed in, culture. Third, Indian philosophy and tradition played a significant role in conceiving and shaping the monuments and the art in India. Again, this is one of the questions which deals with the salient aspects. Question number 12 of the paper this year, Persian literary sources of medieval India reflect the spirit of the age, comment. So the question from literature. So if we analyze this, that means UPSC is asking questions from the syllabus. Now again a question will come in your mind. Questions do come from the syllabus, but where do they come from? How do we need to approach them? Because it is very easy to say than actually write the content for the questions asked by UPSC. Specifically, I'm talking about the culture questions this year, because if you analyze the whole level of difficulty this year of the questions asked, you can say 50% or 2 questions were manageable, 2 questions were extremely difficult. Secondly, when you are practicing for mains or, understanding how question comes in mains, there are 2 things which one needs to look into, which is, always repeatedly said, that whenever one is trying to practice a question or write the answer, one has to see the demand of the question, right? What is this demand of the question? Demand of the question is keywords. Demand of the question is tail words. Demand of the question is theme or context of the question or the topic. Demand of the question is marks weightage. Now this is what, the overall answer writing broadly needs to be understood. So what we will be doing today is, through art and culture questions, we will be understanding how this demand of the question is to be understood or gauged in the examination hall. Given the nature of subject, that art and culture is factual, given other variables that mostly aspirants don't like reading art and culture. Third variable being, you have very spread sources which you are not able to earmark that this is what I will pick up, and from this book I will be able to manage or sail through culture questions. So given all these variables in this subject makes sometimes attemptability of questions in the examination hall specifically difficult, right? So now what one should do for this? So first of all, you should know that this year 4 questions came from art and culture, right, of 50 mark weightage, and that too if we break the topics which are given in the syllabus and how questions have been framed from the topics. 2 questions from Indian culture salient aspects, 1 question on literature and 1 question on architecture, which at least on the periphery looks like that questions are within our reach, right? Now coming to understand how do we arrive at this demand of the question through this year's questions is what we will be proceeding with. So the first question of the paper says, the rock cut architecture represents one of the most important sources of our knowledge of early Indian art and history. Now as we discussed, to understand what to write and how to write in mains specifically, we need to understand the demand of the question. Now this demand of the question is having keywords, tailwords, theme or context of the topic. Now what is this? Now this session will help you, even those who don't know the content of the question, because first of all we will try to understand the question from a very generic perspective, and then I will let you know what the content should have been. Now even me, despite telling you the content, many of you might not have written those points. That does not mean that you are not going to secure good marks. It all depends how you have written, how you have justified the demand of the question, right? So when we say keywords, what we mean is the subparts of the question. So this particular question has keyword starting from rock cut architecture, how it represents one of the most important source of history as well as Indian art. So this we have to write, and the tail word is discuss, right? Discuss means bring out different layers or dimensions or areas where we can say that yes, we get the knowledge or source of history from rock cut architecture, and we get the knowledge or source of history of Indian art through rock cut architecture. So to answer this, obviously one has to write introduction. What can be the introduction to this, where you are just simply making examiner understand that you have understood the question. So why not starting the answer with only opening up what all rock cut architecture you see or you know, and through them how do you arrive at, you know, the history of that period as well as knowledge of Indian art of that period, right? So for that we need to just break rock cut architecture starting from caves, obviously, then cave temples, stupas, chaityas, viharas. You have rock cut sculptures or panels, right? So this is what you see in form of rock cut architecture. Now you don't have to do anything but give examples and, you know, references how you get information from A cave or B cave about history or Indian art. So that is how first you have to break the question in very generic sense and then fill the gap. Now this exercise seems very easy right now, but for those probably who've just written mains, they would not have done it like that. So again, the intention is not to provide you the, you know, exact answer. The intention is to provide you the ways and means to arrive at the best answer at that possible time. So if someone does not know the content, you know, that much, at least if one breaks it, they will be able to arrive at the answer. How do we do that? So for example, if we start from caves, first, you know, instance or reference of caves, rock cut cave comes from our, you know, Bhimbetka caves. Now what does Bhimbetka caves tell us? They tell us about Bhimbetka paintings or, you know, themes. It tells us about social life, right? It tells us about, you know, how economy was at that point of time, at that period, right? Like this, you have to pick up examples of these different structures and arrive at the, you know, possible layers of source of history and source of Indian art. Similarly, if you take an example of cave temple, right? So Kailash temple, Ellora, is a very classic example where you again get, you know, source of Indian art. How? You have to, you can give example of Kailash temple, there you can give, you know, Tandav dance. You can give instance of Bharatnatyam there. You know, Shiva in various poses of dance form, right? So like this, again, you are picking the example and giving us, giving the reference of how it visualized art in different forms, dance, music, painting. Similarly, you know, one example of painting, one example of dance, one example of music. Here, how, you know, source of history can be broken. So for example, if you take the structure of stupas or chaityas or viharas, what do they tell? That they were, you know, patronized by kings. So there were, you know, caves given to monks or ajivikas. Then these viharas were built for the resting place of the monks, right? Some chaityas or viharas were on the trade routes, again suggesting that there were contacts with, different countries, or there was land route, there was sea route. So like this, again, you know, you can give example, right? Now, for attempting this question, there will be a question in your mind: how do we read, you know, of such varied topic from which source? So the answer is, you cover culture from the keywords given in UPSC's main syllabus, right? So if you cover major portions of literature or landmark developments in literature, or landmark developments in architecture, landmark developments in literature, you know, or probably salient features of culture, philosophy, Buddhism, Jainism, you will be able to, you know, draw these kind of linkages which we are discussing right now, right? It's not to say that this question is not doable, but what I mean is by simply reading NCERT also you could have written a good answer to it, given the fact you had understood the demand of the question. Now because during mains you also have to keep in mind how do you justify the demand of the question according to the weightage. You should not forget that whatever content or, you know, layers you are bringing up, they are to be written in 150 words or maximum 200. Otherwise you won't be able to complete the paper, right? So if we, again giving you answer hint, so we talk about how it was a source of history through depiction of religious values. So on Vihara caves, on, you know, Chaitya caves, there were Jataka stories, right? In many cave temples there were, you know, depiction of Puranic stories. Second, economic activities, as we have discussed. So there was association of Buddhist, you know, caves along with the trade routes, again giving us information about how trade or economic activities were at that point of time, right? Then political patronage, mode of communication through modern pillars. Ashoka used to construct, you know, pillars where he used to give his message, Dhamma message, right? Again this gives us, you know, a source of history or knowledge about that time, their you know, their way of life, their code of conduct, right? Then depiction of art forms, as we have discussed, you can, you know, break this answer into two parts: source of knowledge for Indian art and source of knowledge of history, right? And there in Indian art you can give example of painting, dance, music, etc. So like this you can, you know, cover this whole answer, you know, by giving many examples and secure good marks, right? So the only key is, if you understand the question in very generic sense, you won't be having problem to come up with what should be the introduction, what should be the conclusion. You go from first word till the last when you see the question, and automatically that flow will come. Even that question is about rock cut architecture. So first explain what is rock cut architecture, and then by giving examples, you know, just fill the demand of the question. Second question. Now Buddhism, Jainism, all these are favorite topics of UPSC, not only in prelims but also in mains. And otherwise, how do you justify the requirement of the syllabus provided by UPSC till the time you don't know what is Indian culture, its salient aspects? And Indian culture without Indian philosophy is incomplete, right? That is why emphasis is given on Indian philosophy, whether it's, you know, Buddhism, Jainism, Bhakti, Sufi traditions, or, you know, other traditions. So question number 2, Pala period is the most significant phase in the history of Buddhism in India. Enumerate. Now what do you understand by this question? So question is asking you that Pala period is the most significant phase in the history of Buddhism in India. Enumerate. What does it mean? It means, tell us, how do you say, or how can you say that it is the most significant phase? Now again, to write first the introduction to this question in one line, you can very well justify that why Pala period is the most significant phase. Because Pala period signified the last stage of Buddhism or its, you know, popularity in India. Because after this time period, Buddhism declined. So it was one of the last great phases of Buddhism in India. By highlighting the time period, you just simply write this and give reasons and to justify why, in which all areas you can say that it was a significant phase, right? So enumerate means to list down, right? So list down, how do you say that Pala period is the most significant phase in the history of Buddhism, right? Now, this question again can be tackled from your standard source, which is CCRT website. So this is a screenshot of CCRT website where you have Indian paintings, wall painting, miniature painting, modern painting, and within miniature painting, Pala school is very, very important, right? So here in this paragraph or this whole content, you can find answer hints or at least an adequate knowledge about Pala school, Pala history to justify the demand of the question here. So it says that the Pala period witnessed the last great phase of Buddhism and of the Buddhist art in India. That is why this question or this topic is very relevant, right? Then it says, it gives description how this is considered to be the last phase, because they patronized centers of learning. They invited, from different Southeast Asian countries envoys, right? Then they also translated, Buddhist texts during this period. So you have to list down, ways in which the magnificence of Buddhism you can show through Pala period. Now, to spread any religion, that dynasty's rulers plays an important role, right? So indirectly you have to understand for Buddhism to spread to such level in this period, the rulers had played a significant role, right? So how do we justify that? So as you know, Pala rulers patronized Mahayana Buddhism. They believed in Mahayana Buddhism, but during their reign, they were very tolerant. They were religious, tolerant people. So within their time period, there was influx of Hindu traditions or tribal culture into Buddhism. This led to another school being coming up in Buddhism, which is Vajrayana. Vajrayana is Tantric Buddhism. So what is Tantric Buddhism? Tantric Buddhism is when it amalgamates the local, cultures or tribal faith, right, or mysticism in it, in its ambit. So that is how this is one of the significant ways in which we say that, Buddhism flourished. So Vajrayana Buddhism is one. Second thing which you can write is that Pala rulers, used revenue system or a new tax collection system so that they can construct monasteries. Now what was the role of monasteries? Again, monasteries helped in spreading Buddhism in beyond the Indian subcontinent as well, right? So you can write this point also. Thirdly, what you can, give, justification how it was a significant phase by giving the example of Buddhist art. So there was, manuscripts illustrated. So specific example which you can give is of miniature paintings during Pala period, where on palm leaves, there were Buddhist philosophy or knowledge or teachings written on those leaves. So these type of, small examples is what you can give to justify the demand of the question. Thirdly, as I said, that they had a greater role in, inviting the envoys and giving them proper space, right? So Pala rulers were known for their, diplomatic skills. So they, their empire enjoyed good connections and good communication with, Southeast Asia and Middle East. And this became again one of the reasons why Buddhism spread to these areas also, right? So like this, you can again give example of the king of Sumatra. You can give example of Chinese Buddhist travelers also coming there in Nalanda and Vikramshila University and learning more about Buddhism there, right? So the greatest relevance, what you can put in the conclusion also, is that the Pala dynasty created environment for Buddhist monasteries to be constructed, and finally what we see today is these Buddhist ideas in different parts of the world, right? So that is how very generally also, in very generic sense, you can write answers to at least questions which are within your reach, right? So questions on Buddhism, question on architecture, which are very standard, which do not require that much of subject specialization. At least few pointers you should try to write. However, to secure good marks, you need to be precise and very objective about facts, but at least find ways and means in the examination hall to join, to connect, to bring in that, connections in art and culture as well, because as we are seeing the pattern, UPSC mains questions as well as prelims questions are checking how much you can apply at that point of time. So you need to do that kind of practice for writing answers to varied questions on the spot, to understand whether you have honed those nuances of writing answers to the point, and at least try to connect certain dots which you have read through standard textbooks. Don't have these kind of fears that ma'am is telling us to join the dots and connect the dots, but she's not letting us know from where do we need to do the sources. After the discussion, I will be telling you the standard sources for you to at least have a broad idea from where you can start, and then you can move forward as and when questions are coming, right? Third question, which is one of the difficult questions of the paper. Probably you don't read such things in a textbook, standard textbook. Now again, it is easier said than done. I have been given time to think about these questions, so I can give you simpler and easier ways to write answers. But yes, what you have to do is, at the examination hall, you have to bring in that kind of understanding and experience to write such answers to these questions, which are generic and specific at the same time. Now the question is asking you, first of all, you should know that it is a 15 marker question where you have to write too much of content, right, to secure good marks. Now again, what we will be doing is, we assume that you don't know the content for it, but still, by looking at the question's keywords, how do you make a structure and then fill the gaps, right? So the question says, Indian philosophy and tradition. Played a significant role in conceiving and shaping monuments and their art in India. Now this is what the question is, and the tail word is discuss. So how Indian philosophy and tradition helped in conceiving and shaping monuments and their art in India, discuss. This is what demand of the question is, right? So that means, again, if you bring in certain content which you have after you have gone through the syllabus, you can, at least strive to write a good answer to this. How? So you all know about Indian philosophy and tradition. What is Indian philosophy? You can just think of it: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Ajivika, right? There in traditions, what you can say? Bhakti, Sufi traditions, right? So how this philosophy and traditions helped in conceiving and shaping what we see monuments as of today and their art in it. Monuments like temples, stupas, viharas, right? When you link this with traditions, mathas, So you all know that Shankar Dev, right? He is a bhakti, acharya. So we have mathas there. He believed in Advait philosophy. So like this, you first, join again, connect those dots which you have. It's not as if you don't know these things. It's just that you are, packaging the knowledge which you have according to the demand of the question. Similarly, their art, that means again you have to talk here how, paintings reflect Indian philosophy and traditions. Dance reflect Indian philosophy and tradition. Music. So we have open spaces in Indo-Islamic monuments. They believed in, sama, creating sama, right? We have Sufi influence in Indo-Islamic structures. So they believe in music, having a sama. Similarly, if you talk about Jain, so we have Jain caves. What is Jain philosophy? Jain philosophy believes in, meditation. It believes in severe asceticism, right? It believes in, extremities, right? So they had, caves which, met their requirements of Jain philosophy. Similarly, if you go into the deeper theoretical knowledge, apart from what you can, draw linkage with from your generic understanding, there you can gain more marks. But even if someone is able to have this idea of just, understanding how the question are to be written for mains, they can still secure, good marks. Because this examination is relative, competition is relative, so some might have left this question altogether thinking that they have not studied it. So try to attempt questions of these kinds, try to practice questions in culture more, so as to come to the stage where, at least having a framework and then, a moderate level of knowledge can sail you through in mains. Now coming to the theoretical aspect. So when we talk of Indian philosophy, specifically Hinduism, as well as, we can say that there are certain relatedness when it comes to monument structure in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism. There is a concept called Mount Meru in Hindu philosophy. This believes that Meru is the golden, mountain which is controlling the universe. This is the main god. And then there are, periphery obstructions or, small mountains to overcome those challenges. So that is how the structure is square, right? How do you get shape in, temples in the form of shikhar? Shikhar is nothing but a kind of a mount, right? A mountain which is having connection with cosmology. So what is cosmology? Where, there is an understanding that there is a power which is controlling the universe, and then there is a connection from the universe through a body. That body is nothing but human, and human again has energies, right? Then if you see, we have small shikhars on the fourth side, right? The structure of the plan of placing the ideal in the Garbhagriha, right? Again, Panchayatan style you can write here, drawing linkage from Hinduism and the kind of monument you see, right? Secondly, if you want to give an example, you can give example of, from traditions, Bhakti and Sufi traditions. So you can take the example of Matha. Even, our Buddhist stupas, chaityas, viharas, Jain caves, they are, on this ideology only. Sometimes we take, circle-like plan, right? That is again, both rectangular, square and circle are mentioned in Vastu Shastra. Right? So all these theoretical knowledge is what then you can write and then secure good marks. Thirdly, if you want to again dwell into these things more, then what you have to do is you have to widen your sources with respect to preparing for art and culture. Right? I hope you have understood the question, how you have to break. Now why I'm saying that this question is particularly difficult, reason being you don't really read how philosophy and traditions play a role in how the monuments and art are there in it, right? You don't have a book for it. So what you have to do again is you have to understand that we have in our syllabus salient features or salient aspects of Indian culture, and Indian culture and history is not complete if you not include philosophy. That is why in prelims also, in mains also, there are questions coming from philosophy, whether it's Buddhism or Jainism, right? So this is again what you have to keep in mind when you are doing culture. Now giving you further examples in it. So even Sangam time or Sangam phase, their poems were recounting themes related to environment, nature. So mostly temples were built near the riverside in South India. Secondly, you can again give example of how Hinduism chooses the circle to represent change, right? So again, all these things have a philosophical meaning behind it, and that is what you have to come up with. Similarly, you can give example that why certain structures in Indo-Islamic were having jalis, why they were having motifs of nature, right? So they did not believe in different forms of God. They believed in nature worship. They also gave too much of importance to water. So there were arrangements done in mosque to store water, right? They had jalis because again their faith believes in water and light. So they always believed in having light in their structures through jali like architectural features. So like this very fine understandings or that inquisitiveness, that why this structure has been made like this, right? Why probably you see in different temples a particular type of structure, why certain temples are called as temples of Navgrahas or 9 cosmic planets, because they are aligned with certain kind of philosophy behind it, right? And that is what you have to take out in this question. So if you talk about how philosophy and traditions helped in conceiving and shaping our art also, there you can mention the paintings done on the temples or relief structures. You can mention again here philosophy of Buddhism, how it was depicted in monolithic structures of pillars by Ashok, right? You can also give example of Ajanta cave paintings, how it spread the message or the real or the mythical stories of Buddha's life, right? There were also depiction of Puranic stories from Hindu philosophy, Puranic stories on temple structural panels. So all this suggests how philosophy had a huge role in the way we see monuments and paintings today, right? So like this you can give examples of such kinds and again secure good marks. Then coming to the next question, last question in ancient art and culture. So the question is, Persian literary sources of medieval India reflect the spirit of the age. Comment. Now again a question will come in your mind. Persian literary sources. Now Do we have to do this also? Because your syllabus mentions literature, you have to do literature from, each phase. I will be discussing about it after we have ended the discussion on the questions. So what I mean here is, the question no doubt is difficult. You don't really, read Persian, literary sources, but yet Persian literary sources played a significant role in the medieval times, right? So they are the most important sources of history. Now what you can understand from the type of questions UPSC has asked, they have a common theme of source of history. So basically these questions are dwelling into the fact that, how from different, architectural features, literary sources, right, art forms, we understand how our culture was, right? And this is what again the intention behind this question could be, right? So the question is, Persian literary sources of medieval India reflect the spirit of the age. Now what you have to again keep in mind in this particular question is how Persian literary sources reflect the spirit of the age. That means of that time, what all information of different kinds do we have through these Persian literary sources, right? So that means you have to justify that they were actually spirit of the age because of the keyword comment. So you have to justify, right? So this is one opinion that the Persian literary sources were reflecting the spirit of the age. So you have to again give specific examples of Persian literary sources to secure good marks. Secondly, what you have to understand in this question, because of the use of the tail word comment, in the end you have to conclude that there were other, literary sources which were springing up at that point of time as well, right? So let's understand how you need to look into this question. So when we talk about, the spirit of the age in the medieval India, we first of all get to know through autobiographies, biographies, we get to know through travelers' account, we get to know this, how the Persian literary sources reflect the spirit of the age, of what, translations happened at that point of time in Persian language. So for example, to dwell into this point more so that you are able to relate, what I mean to say here is that there were translations done in Persian language at that point of time. Why that was done? First of all, you have to understand in the medieval India, Persian was the court language of many Mughal rulers, right? And it also played a huge role till a very long time to understand history, right? So at that point of time, many Mughal rulers paid special attention to translate, certain themes in Persian language. So for example, Panchtantra, for example, Ramayana, certain Upanishads were translated into Persian. Again, this reflects how there was, synergy between Hindu beliefs, local culture, social practices with Islam, right? So there were also again, specific efforts. You can give example of Akbar here. He had a separate department of translation, right? Second, you can give example of Shah Jahan, you can give example of Dara Shikoh, who paid special interest in translating works into Persian language. There is one Persian work of Dara Shikoh which is also very important work which signifies the synergy between Hinduism and Islam, right? So all these again finer details you need to have to secure good marks, but understand that if at all, questions are coming on difficult line, to at least attempt them, what should be the way. Secondly, there are specific, travelers account which give us, source of history as to how, at that point of time, economy was, society was, right? So here you have to specifically mention Persian travelers. In autobiographies, biography, again, how political history or economic history, of the king is what is, written. Specific scholars account, poets who wrote in Persian language, their works again can be mentioned here to, justify how it was the spirit of the age. So more or less what you have to do is through specific examples. So if you're talking about autobiographies and biographies, so Babarnama shed light on history of his reign. Similarly, Tuzuki Jahangari, includes not only history of his reign but also, reflected on art, politics and information about his family. Then you have Barni's Tariq-e-Firoz Shahi, Amir Khusro's Tughlaqnama, Firishta's accounts, right? So you just have to again, fill these layers to secure good marks. Secondly, if you talk about specifically, historical works and accounts of travelers, so you can mention, Abdul Razak, you can mention Al-Biruni and what did they actually, wrote in their accounts to secure good marks. Now the most important relevant question which will be coming in your mind right now, that, how do we do this? How do we arrive here? Which is that one source or two sources which you should do, which can at least give you this broader understanding of how questions or this huge, portion of syllabus in culture can be dealt with minimum sources. Now coming to sources, because as you know, culture plays an important part not only in mains, gradually the stakes are growing, but also in prelims. The sources which you refer for prelims remain the same for mains also, right? But again, what you would not do, unlike in prelims, is, memorizing too many facts for mains. Broader understanding or making notes of specific phases. So if I were to give you an example how to approach, I'm just giving an example from the syllabus so that you understand how you need to use these sources. So sources don't change much for majority portion. What changes is actually how you do it, right? So if you talk of, let's say, architecture. Let's take an example of architecture. So first point of reference of architecture we see where? Rock cut architecture in the form of caves. You go phase wise. Then comes your, so after prehistoric phase, you come to Harappan civilization. There you do town planning or structures, right? Then you come to Mauryan phase. There again you do, pillars or monolithic structures. You do Buddhist structures like stupas, caves, chaityas, right? Then after Mauryan phase, you come to Guptas, most important golden phase of Indian culture through temples. So like this, if you go phase wise, in a very evolutionary approach, you still can, cover widest range of topics holistically, right? So 3-4 examples here in caves, 3-4 points in town planning, 3-4 points in, Mauryan phase, So like that you can cover the way UPSC is asking questions, right? So that means if NCERTs are a must for you to, do mains and prelims both. CCRT website again is a good source for many topics given in, main syllabus like literature, painting, architecture. Your, specifically if you're talking about selective topics, for South Indian history, you can refer Tamil Nadu history textbooks. For, again selected reading, there are, few chapters in A.L. Basham's book Wonder That Was India, specifically those which cover Indian philosophy and very, peripheral or fringe areas like astronomy, cosmology, mathematics, medicine, logic, coinage. So there was a question in coinage 2 years back, right? So there was a question now in Indian philosophy directly, right? So all these things which you don't get in your NCERTs, you have to go for certain standard textbooks. Now again a question will come to your mind. For one subject, if we were to do so many books, how are we going to manage it? Is there still, surety that questions will come from these topics? You all have to change your mindset. Questions don't come from a book. Question comes from syllabus. So what you have to strive for whenever you're reading sources or books, recommended books, that you cover topic from that book rather than covering books. So if I am saying you have to do 4 books, that does not mean you have to cover those 4 books, from first page till the last. What you have to build is an understanding of the topics given in these books, so that whenever time will come for mains, you are at least able to write answers, right? I'm just giving you this recommendation, reason being because the kind of questions UPSC is generally asking in Indian culture, they are more or less standard topics out of syllabus, but attemptability becomes difficult specifically at the examination hall, right? That is why we have discussed how you first understand the demand of the question, right? And then, you put examples here and there to solve the purpose, right? Don't strive for perfection, because there can be varied answers to a question, but they need not be wrong. They will be, dwelling into demand of the question here and there. The kind of examples you give may differ from person to person in mains, whether it's history or society or geography, but the essence is what you all should have in common, right? So you don't have to deviate from the demand of the question when it comes to mains. What you have to strive for is that you prepare the topics holistically from, sources which are relevant and authentic. Again, there is a question in the aspirant's mind, do we do this book and then it's fine? Or do we have to specifically do, Tamil Nadu history textbooks, right? So every book has certain specific or niche expertise which you don't find in your other books, right? So try again focusing on topics, because that is what you have to ultimately do for your mains, rather than, thinking about whether is this sufficient or not, right? So all the best, guys. You can, still pursue your dream of becoming an IAS or IPS or IRS by simply understanding one notion of this whole examination pattern. That this examination, if you've gone through the notification also, or the requirements of this examination from personality angle, remains that you should have mental alertness, you should have clear and logical exposition, you should have balanced judgment, you should have variety and depth of interest, you should be aware of things happening around you, you should be able to relate and correlate with the developments, right? All these requirements which are laid down, and even, UPSC's notification in the personality test suggests that you need to be open. Now opening up does not mean that you read everything what comes to your hand. You have to have a boundary of the syllabus, and then decoding the layers within it, right? So always have this open mind of taking the challenges and adjusting to any challenging position, circumstance there and then. UPSC through its different stages, whether it's prelims, whether it's main, whether it's interview, is trying to check how much you understand and adjust to a very unpredictable environment, right? A challenging environment. So there and then you are trained to take decisions, you are trained to write answers for at least few questions, right? You are trained to they are just checking in ethics, your decision making skills, how much do you deviate from your rules, right? All this suggests that you need to have an open personality. Be very mindful in this exam, be very open in this exam, right? Try to focus on the core topics and the issues which are specifically laid down in the syllabus. Try to see through previous year papers of mains, what all aspects are they touching in the syllabus and how you're going to reorient your preparation vis-a-vis the kind of questions are coming. So broadly, if you ask me, if I were to summarize specifically for art and culture mains preparation, stick with standard sources, practice more tests, right? Try to hone the skill of answer writing, right? Because that is the most important aspect you should have when you are preparing for UPSC. Next thing what is important is that understand that ultimately you have to attempt 20 questions, right? So you can't give justification to all the questions equally, and if you were to give justification to all the questions to secure very good marks, you need to understand that there is a mark weightage also given for each question. So accordingly, arrange the content and justify the demand of the question. So all the best, guys.